Hi folks, FPL General here recording a Gameweek 38 episode of my 59th minute FPL podcast. I'm recording on Friday morning, the 10th of May. So after a very painful Gameweek 37, I couldn't face into recording the podcast on the usual Tuesday slot. So I needed a few days to get over the pain of a 19-point game week, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes. But as well, I just wanted to wait until after the Champions League and Europa League games to get this podcast out there, just so it's up to date for people to listen to Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So, final game week of the season. Hard to believe it is already upon us. The season has absolutely flown by. Hopefully the summer goes just as fast and July rolls around quickly so we can get tinkering with those game week 1 squads. So a quick podcast this week, usual format, so I'm just going to get straight into it. One last shout out, the final 59th minute shout out of the season goes to Cardiff's Danny Ward, a player who was rotting on my bench for a part of the season, in the early part of the season, so I'm happy to give him a 59th minute shout out on the podcast. So unless in Game Week 38, Pascal Gross or Glenn Murray can they've got one more game week to get their hat-trick of 59-minute shout-out, so I'll be keeping an eye on that on Sunday as well as other things. So going to touch on Game Week 37 just very quickly because I really don't want to talk about it or think about it. I've almost got to the stage now where I'm convinced myself that it didn't even happen. It was just a nightmare. So in all my years playing the game, it was my worst ever game week. There's 6.3 million FPL managers and my game week rank was 6.2 million. Very, very impressive to get a 6.2 million rank in the second last game week of the season. So I'm just going to name and shame the players. Nobody scored more than 3 points in my team. I got Son's red card. Elsewhere in midfield, Ericsson 2, Mane 2, Ward-Prowse 1. And Sterling captain got me 6 points. So at least I did nail my captaincy this week. He was my highest scoring player, so at least I got that one right. Up front, a blank for Jimenez, 2 points. Aguero 2 points. Cheers, lads. In defence, 3 defenders. Each of them all got 1 point. Scott Dan, Andrew Robertson, and the disaster that is Kolasinac. And in goal, Ben Foster 3 points. So that totaled 19. Absolute disaster. Dropped from 331k overall to 484k. So I've put myself in with a shout of going from top 500 to 500k. So I need to try and avoid that in the final game week of the season. As I said, not going to dwell on that too much. It's well in the background now. Going to look ahead to game week 38. That's what people are listening to this podcast for. Watch list, a couple of players. I'm going to go through the players I've got on my watch list for the final game week of the season. I've got 2 free transfers, so I'm probably going to sell Son, and it looks like Robertson might miss out. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but if it is, I'll be selling Robertson as well. So I'll be using my 2 free transfers for a defender and a midfielder. The defenders I'll be looking at, if Robertson is out, I could make a straight switch to Van Dijk or Alexander-Arnold, but I actually fancy Wolves to score in that game, so I may go to Man City instead. So I like Laporte, Company's an option, Walker's an option on the final day when budget's not really an issue. But most likely, I think Laporte is the guy I would go to. He's just been such a good FPL pick this season, and one of my failures has been not getting on him this season. The only other one I may go for is Luke Shaw. United at home to Cardiff, but again, we have been pretty atrocious. And there's talk of Solskjaer giving some kids a game, so I think everyone's at risk in the United team of rotation. So I think I'll just stick with Liverpool or City, and most likely I'll go for Laporte there, I think. In midfield then, looking lots of questions about Son replacement. So the ones I've got on my watch list are Pogba, Ryan Fraser, Sigurdsson, Bernardo Silva, Lucas Moura after his heroics in the Champions League, and Andros Townsend just as a bit of a final game week punt there. So most likely I think I'll go with Pogba. He hit the post twice last week, so he was getting forward a bit more. And again, United should beat Cardiff on the final day. I think we're under pressure to put on a performance in front of the home fans in the final game. I think Pogba is possibly safer from rotation than some of the others. So, I can't really see him being benched for this one. So, most likely that's where I'll go, Pogba and Laporte. I really like Ryan Fraser. Again, a player, I think I've only owned him for one game week this season. That's another failure on my part. He's been superb. I think he's battling with Hazard for most assists. I think he might be one behind him. And I like that Palace-Bournemouth game. I just think has the potential to be a high-scoring game. So I think the likes of Fraser could do well in that one. And I've got Townsend down here as well. Townsend got his first goal since January last week. And I was just listening to his press conference after the game, or his interview after the game, and he said, it was such a relief to end the drought, and that he's hoping to score another one on the final day. So we always like to hear those kind of things from FPL assets. So Townsend could be a nice differential on the final day. Sigurdsson, I always like Sigurdsson. Set pieces, penalties. Spurs could be pretty jaded after that Champions League game, so Everton could easily go out and win that game, even though it's away from home. Everton have been in excellent form, so I like Sigurdsson as a final day option as well. Bernardo Silva, very impressed with him last couple of weeks. It doesn't always translate into FPL points, but City have to go out and win that Brighton game. Bernardo will start, as he always does, so there's always a chance of attacking points there. So I like Bernardo for the final day as well. Lucas Moura, hat-trick in the Champions League. It's been one of the best weeks of football I can ever remember. The company screamer on Monday night. Not that I enjoyed it too much as a Man U fan, but just what it means, scoring his first goal of the season. And then Liverpool Tuesday night and Spurs Wednesday night. It's just been a roller coaster of a week, and hopefully Game Week 38 in FPL can be something similar, with loads of points and hopefully 100 plus hauls for some managers on the final day. Lucas is an option. Again, I'm just slightly worried about how much that Ajax game will have taken out of the Spurs players, so I'm probably going to avoid them. Dele Alli was one I was considering as well. He's looked better in recent weeks, but again, he's just not done enough this season to justify the price. So that's midfielders. So most likely I think I'll go for Pogba. It's the most obvious move. I'm a United fan. I've got nothing to lose. Final day, I could just see him, turning it on after doing nothing for weeks and weeks. So most likely I'll go for probably Pogba and Laporte is what I'm thinking. Anyone who is in the market for a new striker, I'm probably going to keep Jimenez and play him against Liverpool, but I think a lot of people are considering moving him on, and I can see why. Liverpool have they've been so good defensively. Jimenez his stats have dropped off in recent weeks as well. So I can see why people are maybe moving on to a more exciting asset for the final day. The likes of Callum Wilson, who's been so consistent this season. I really like Wilson for the final day. I like Wilfried Zaha as well in that fixture. A couple of others, if you want to take a punt. Mitrovic going back to face Newcastle. He has more shots over the last 6 game weeks than any other striker. I think it's 26. So, they haven't been going in the back of the net. He's only scored 1 in his last 13, but again, he's a player I could see doing well in Game Week 38. Rondon in that Fulham Newcastle fixture as well. I'm a big fan of Rondon. He's been playing well in recent weeks. He got a great goal against Liverpool, so I like him as well against Fulham. Arnautovic, he's a player who can't be trusted for any more than a week. So Game Week 38 is the ideal time to get someone like Arnie, who's very injury prone, against Watford. So I like Arnie as well. And Rashford, again, hasn't been scoring many goals or points in recent weeks, but again, that Cardiff fixture is very tasty on paper, so I like Rashford too. So there's lots of options there if you're looking for a striker. So that is my watch list for the final game week of the season. Lots of options there to chew on for the next couple of days before the Sunday deadline. A couple of questions now from Twitter. I think I've picked out 5. Just going to rattle through these quickly. First question came in from Navishka. And Navishka still has his triple captain, which I'm sure some people do. And Navishka is asking, should he triple captain Sterling, Mane or Vardy this week? So I don't really like Vardy against Chelsea. So it would be between Sterling and Mane. And I'm going to come to captaincy soon as well, and I'll talk about those two players again. So triple captaincy, I think if I still had it for the final game week, I would be on a Liverpool asset or a Man City asset. You're looking at Mane or Salah or Sterling or Aguero is where I'd be going with that chip. But again, if you've got nothing to lose like me, maybe you can take a punt. Maybe someone like Redmond at home to Huddersfield, or even Callum Wilson, or even Fraser. There's lots of punts you can take with a chip if you're prepared to just have a bit of fun with it. Next question was from FPL Kiwi. He asks, are we overlooking Arsenal assets? So yeah, there's not a lot of talk about Arsenal this week. They play Burnley away. They had a great result in the Europa League Thursday night, through to the final to face Chelsea now. But when it comes to Arsenal this season in FPL, I just can't trust Emery. He's just so unpredictable. He could spring a few surprises on the final day and, give Lacazette a rest or give Aubameyang a rest. We just really don't know. And I just don't like bringing in a player that has, slight doubts over them after that Europa League game. So I'm just going to avoid Arsenal. I've been burned by Kolasinac, brought him in on the wild card, and he's been an absolute disaster. Seems to have picked up an injury now as well. So he's going to just sit on the bench for the weekend. But again, yeah, I just think there's teams and players that are more trusting than Arsenal assets for the final day. Now that's not to say Lacazette or Aubameyang will go out and fire in a hat trick at the weekend. But for me, I just don't like the uncertainty over starts there. Pep, we call Pep a troll, but I think Emery's an even bigger troll this season. Next question was from Liam Lane. Is Mason Greenwood a viable option this weekend? Yes. So I've seen a lot of people talking about this Greenwood guy at United. But for me, I don't really see it as an FPL option because there's no guarantee that he's going to start unless Solskjaer comes out today in the press conference and says, yes, he's going to play. Then that's the only reason I'd be interested in it. If Solskjaer said Greenwood's going to start, then I'd go for him. But otherwise, it's more than likely it would be a 15-20 minute appearance from the bench. So I don't like that. Again, there's safer options who are nailed on to play. So I really don't see the hype around Greenwood this week. Next question was from Manohar. Manohar asks, is it worth taking a -4 for the final game week of the season? So this has been a common question on social media this week. Is it worth taking a hit for the final game week? And for me, I'm very reluctant to, because when I take a points hit, I like to have 3 or 4 weeks to get the payback on that points hit. But if it's for the right players, I wouldn't be against it for the final day. For example, if you're taking a -4 to get someone like Aguero or Sterling or Mane or even Salah, then I wouldn't be afraid of it in the final day, because I would fancy those four. There's a very good chance that they would pay you back on the final day. So if you're removing a player like Son who's going to get 0, and you're bringing in someone like Mane or Salah who should score well, I don't mind the -4, but I don't like it for other scenarios. I don't like it for a goalkeeper or defender this week. I don't even like it for Jimenez. I would just play Jimenez and avoid the points hit, because we know he's got a very good record this season against the top 6. So I actually fancy Jimenez, the likes of Jimenez and Jota, to get something against Liverpool this week. So again, I don't like the -4 for those players. I would just stick with them, play them, and hope for the best. Last question I will tackle is from FPL Pro. Simple question: Pogba or Redmond for Son? So I've mentioned I'm probably going to go Pogba. I can't get Redmond because I've already got triple Southampton. I've got Valerie, Ward-Prowse and Ings, and I'm going to be playing all of them this weekend and hoping that they smash Huddersfield 3 or 4-0. But I think if I had the option to get to Redmond, there's a good chance I would go there instead of Pogba. I just really like Redmond. Every time I've seen him last couple of weeks, every time I watch the highlights, he looks good. He catches the eye. He's playing out of position. Great fixture. He got his rest last week. He came on for the second half. So I would fully expect him to start this week at home in the final game of the season. So I really like Redmond this week, and I think he's a very good differential captaincy option as well. So I think that's where I would go if I didn't already have triple Southampton. So that's your answer there. I like Redmond for the final day. That brings me on to captaincy for the weekend. I put a poll on Twitter I think it was on Wednesday. I just had a look at it this morning. There's over 6,500 votes. So I put up 4 options for the armband: Aguero, Sterling, Salah and Mane. The 4 most obvious captains in my opinion this week. So the vote returned. Aguero came out on top with 39%. Sterling second with 26%. Salah came in third with 20%, and Mane got 15%. So not an awful lot in the votes really. The City guys coming out on top, because on paper Brighton is an easier fixture than Wolves. So I spoke in previous podcasts that I brought in Sterling in game week 36 with a view to captain him, giving him the armband in 37 and 38. So captained him in 37, got a blank from him. So he's in my bad books now, so I don't know if I'll go for him on the final day. I have a warm feeling about Sadio Mane for the armband this week. He's just been so consistent at home this season. Obviously, I don't have Salah, so I really like Mane at home this week. I may go differential, but I just don't have too many assets that I can really trust as punts. I don't really trust Ward-Prowse. Eriksen, don't really trust him either with the armband. So most likely I'll stick with one of these guys from one of Aguero, Sterling or Mane. And I think if I had to make my decision today, I think I will go for Mane. I just have a gut feeling about him. As the weekend gets closer. Been so good at home this season, and he did well for me as triple captain as well. A couple of weeks ago. So I tend to be loyal to players who've served me well. Sterling has disappointed me last couple of weeks. Aguero hasn't been firing on all cylinders either. So I think I'll stick. I may end up going for Mane at home. He's just been so good at home, and I expect Liverpool and City both to win at the weekend. So really, it really depends on which you prefer. You've really got to go with your gut feeling this week on captaincy. I think if you're going well, loads of good options there from City and Liverpool. A couple of housekeeping things before I finish up. I will be doing a season review podcast next week. It's going to be a busy week for me. I'm in London next Tuesday to do the FPL show, the wrap-up show there. So be sure to keep an eye out for that one as well. So it'll probably be towards the end of the week before I get time to do the season review podcast. But I'm going to say next Friday for that one. So keep an eye out for that. I'll tweet it out when it's available. That should be the best podcast of the season, because there should be a lot to learn from my season this year. And it'll be, I'll talk about what I'm going to bring into next season and how I intend to play the game next year. I did write an article this week for Fantasy Football Scout. It's the start of me picking the bones of my season, so got lots of good feedback on that one. So be sure to check that one out as well. It's just about what's some of the things that have gone wrong and what I feel has contributed to my poor rank this season. So you'll find that on my Twitter feed. I've tweeted that out yesterday. I put an article together as well this week for the Fantasy Bet blog. It's 5 punts for the final day. So a couple of players there that I haven't mentioned on the podcast. A couple of differentials if you want to just take a punt on the final day. So check that one out as well. Congratulations as well to the Always Cheating podcast and FPL TV, who both picked up awards at the FBAs last night. Well done and well deserved to excellent FPL accounts you should be following, at Hail Cheaters and at FPL TV. If you're not already following them, be sure to follow them for next season. What else do I need to say before I finish? As always, I will be competing on Fantasy Bet this weekend. It's a big one for the final game week of the season finale tournament. They've upped the prize pool to £5,000, so you can finish the season in style by getting a slice of that prize pool. I've been having an absolute nightmare on Fantasy Bet the last couple of weeks. I captained Son last week, who got me at -4, so I'm hoping my luck can turn on in that tournament this weekend and hopefully finish the season with a few bob. It's very exciting on Fantasy Bet as well. There's a season-long tournament which has a £100,000 prize pool. So first place is 25 grand, and the top 5, there's probably about 10 points in it. So there's going to be a lot of swings on the final day there. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that one shakes out. I'll be keeping a close eye on that on Sunday. As always, if you're using Fantasy Bet, it's 18 plus and begambleaware.org. Enjoy the final game week, folks. Enjoy Game Week 38. It's always fun when all the games are on at the same time. It's a bit of a roller coaster. I remember fondly last season, bringing in Van Aanholt for the final day. I think he got me 18 points and fired me into the top 500. So it's going to be a very different final day for me this season. It'll just be counting down the clock and looking forward to those final whistles and the nightmare can end. So enjoy the final game week. Enjoy your weekend. Most important of all, whatever happens in FPL, enjoy your weekend, whatever you're up to. And sincere thanks to everyone for taking the time to listen to the podcast this season. It means a lot to me that I've got very good numbers. I tend to get about 10,000 listeners every week, which to me is just bonkers for someone who just enjoys FPL and sits in my kitchen once a week and speaks into my laptop at my kitchen table. So it really does mean a lot that so many people take that half an hour of their week to listen to my thoughts. So thank you very much for that. And I look forward to recording the season review podcast next week. So cheerio, folks, and I will talk to you all soon.